So as the author of Cities of Smoke and Starlight, a lot of people told me that the cover is what initially drew them in and got them reading the back and then realized, oh, I do want to read this book, or maybe I actually don't want to read this book. Either way, the cover told the story for me and got people to actually look at it. And that's kind of what the cover is supposed to do. So today I'm going to give you 8 steps to hiring your own cover artist or cover designer. So the first thing you need to do is compile a bunch of stuff together. And it's kind of a generic, broad category there, but I think it's really important. And if you haven't started a mood board, definitely start one for your novel. It helps drafting and revising and helps motivate you anyway, but it will also help you when you go to hire a cover designer or cover artist. Whenever I'm searching Pinterest, I just go ahead and dump it into my generic board for my novel, and then I go through and I organize it. While you're doing that, you also need to research your genre and compile a list of trends that are popular in the genre for your book covers. So for example, I know in rom-coms, the illustrated flat colored look is really popular. So if you are writing a rom-com and you have a fantasy looking cover with the painted, but the detailed painted landscapes, probably not going to do good in the rom-com genre because people think that your book is a fantasy book. And while I love fantasy, if I'm looking for a rom-com, I don't want to read about dragons because I'm looking for fun and love and everything like that, not dragons killing people. And that's what that's what a painted fantasy-esque landscape tells me. Even if your rom-com maybe exists in a fantasy world, that tells me it's a epic fantasy and not a rom-com. So just pay attention to those, take note. There might be different colors people use in that specific genre and so on. There might be different ways to create your title or have your title look. Pay attention to those trends because that will help your book sell more because it immediately tells your reader what your book is about and if they want to pick it up or not. You also need to be deciding on a price range. Now, if you want a painted cover in this a fantasy type deal, it's going to cost a good bit because it's custom artwork and the artist is going to have to put in hours of time to do the landscape and the characters and XYZ, and so it's going to cost a good bit. Just throwing that out there, you're going to have to know that. However, if you want a Photoshop cover, which there are some wonderfully done Photoshop covers, those are usually cheaper. So it depends on your price range and kind of just figure that out first, and then you can make a decision about what your cover wants, what do you want your cover to look like a little bit later once you have that in mind. And like I mentioned before, the last kind of mini step for this compile part of the video here is to know what you want ahead of time. Don't go to your cover artist and be like, I don't know what I want. I just want characters on it and a dragon. You got to give them more than that. Now, some people maybe might take that and be like, yay, free reign. I don't know. I haven't worked with a billion people, so maybe there are people out there that like that. But as somebody who, if I were imagining me being a book cover artist, I'm going to need a little more detail. So kind of have an idea of what your book cover, what you want it to look like. Now, you get that from researching your genre. If it's romance, you definitely want to put the couple on the cover. Things like that. You might want to have poses in mind and a background. You want to have an idea of where you want to go with your book cover. Step number 2 would be to research designers. So you can find cover designers and cover artists in several different spaces on the internet or in books in your own home. But look in the acknowledgement section or the copyright page. A lot of times people will think they're cover artist or cover designer, and maybe you can reach out to those people and see if they were willing to create your own book cover. You can also find lots of different artists on Instagram or just by asking friends. And lastly, you can find different artists on different sites such as Facebook groups or ArtStation and so on and so forth. I found my cover artist on ArtStation because I was just browsing art and I found my cover artist because she did Cosmere art because I love Brandon Sanderson. I love Stormlight Archive and basically all the Cosmere books, and I thought her art was really awesome. And so I just reached out and asked her if she did book covers as well or would be interested in doing my book cover, and it worked out quite well. Step number 3 would be to send those inquiries. Go ahead and send emails or DMs to those people and ask if they're available, what their availability is. Also, some artists don't post their rates online, so you're gonna have to inquire about that. During this process, you also want to find out what their process is for designing a book cover and kind of how you're involved. So you want to know what their payment schedule is. Do they send out sketches beforehand? Do they update you along the way? Do they accept PayPal or credit card or XYZ? What is their process? What are the next steps if you decide to go with them as your cover artist? It's not weird to ask them that, because you need to know that, and they need to know that about you, like what you're expecting as well. So definitely open communication is the key. And the next step would be to decide on a cover artist. Simple in theory, but it might be difficult for you to actually decide. But either way, that's the next step. And then once you have decided and let them know, like, hey, I want to work with you, definitely do some logistic type stuff. So that might entail some sort of contract, which, I mean, I would hope that there's some sort of contract there, a legally or like a written type thing. I'm not a lawyer, clearly, and I don't know the correct jargon here, but that protects the artist and also protects you, because you obviously want to use the artwork for your book cover and maybe promotional images and different things like that. And the artists, I mean, they're creating it. It's technically their creative property, and so they would like to be protected as well. And so an agreement is wonderful. You also don't want to not kind of agree to maybe a price and say like, oh, it's, X amount of money, but you don't get it in writing, and then later on the cover artist will end up charging you a whole lot more. That's not fun. Or different things can happen, and so you just want to protect yourself, and they also want to protect them. It's in everyone's best interest. You also want to talk about copyright stuff, so you're obviously going to hopefully be able to use the art for your book cover. I mean, definitely talk this out. You also might want to use it for promotional images, like I said earlier. Make sure you have those rights and the artist is okay with that. And there might be other things that are mixed in there with copyrights, like selling prints. The artist might want to do that. Or if you want to create t-shirts and sell that is a commercial license type deal. And you need to hash that out with the cover artist, because some cover artists might not be okay with you putting their art on t-shirts and selling it. Without paying them extra for it. So it just depends on the person, and depends on kind of what you want and what they want. So talk to them, just be open and communicate. And if you can't get through it and can't decide on it, go to somebody else. It's not the end of the world. You also should have already communicated, but you want to make sure that you're good on what is expected. So are you just looking for like an ebook cover art? Are you looking for the full wrap, which means the front, spine, and back? Are you looking for a hardcover wrap, which is the front, spine, and back, and then the flaps? Just make sure that's clear. And if you want them to do the typography, which is the title, stuff, and like your name and the back cover blurb, and put all that together. Just make sure everything's clear and that you know what you want, and they are aware of that, because miscommunication can definitely derail everything. Okay, number 6, once you have worked all that out, you can begin the process of working with your cover designer to design your covers. So you might have already given some details about your cover to get a quote earlier, but now is the time to give details if they request that. So for example, I sent my book blurbs so they would get a vibe of what my book was. I sent character descriptions, and then I wasn't sure what background I wanted, and I had 3 different choices. So I kind of gave some details about that. Like I mentioned earlier, I also created Pinterest boards, and I had a specific Pinterest board for my book cover. So I divided that Pinterest board into several different categories. So I divided into characters. So Hallie and Case each had their own board I had face claims in there, and I had just different things that I knew I wanted them to have on the cover. So I also had a mood board based on the story and just had the aesthetic pieces there. I also had a background and settings board, which included the 3 background choices I kind of was playing around with, and different examples and kind of how I imagined those to look like, and mood, inspiration, motivational type things that fit into that category. I also had a color palette board because I wanted it to be a steampunk kind of vibe, and so I had lots of warm colors, but specifically neutrals like browns and golds and reds and stuff like that in the color palette. And then I had another mini board for book covers I enjoyed or I liked, and kind of was thinking that I wanted my book cover to look like. Anyway, so I sent all that to my cover artist, and I basically, while that was kind of detailed, I knew what I wanted, and I also, though, wanted her to kind of have fun with it. So I didn't give specific details, like I needed 3 buttons on the jacket and blah, blah, blah. I just knew I wanted Case to wear goggles and him to have a leather jacket, and I wanted to look steampunky / Star Warsy. And I kind of gave her the free rein to do that. So I enjoyed kind of seeing what she came up with, because it was just so fun. The next step would be to wait. because sometimes your slot is a little ways out, and so you just gotta wait and be patient. Last but not least, your book cover is done. And make sure to thank your artist because they put a lot of time and effort into your book cover, and you're so excited. Don't forget to do that. Just make sure that's on your plate. I personally sent my book cover artist a free copy of my book. And it's a nice thing to do. You don't have to do that. That's just what I did. But I was like, well, they created the book cover essentially, so they should get a free copy. That was just my opinion.
Want to self-publish? Check out my own experience by clicking on this video and watching.